Hey folks, there's a Facebook group and it's called the Gluttons for Punishment. It's a members only group and I am a member of it. And it's kind of a lighthearted or tongue-in-cheek look at the mess we get ourselves into buying, selling, working on basically junk. In other words, we're gluttons for punishment. We just can't stop punishing ourselves. And with this job right here I'm going to show you, it's a prime example of why I belong. Okay, so what do we got? We've got a Kawasaki Bayou 250. It's an 05 KLF 250A3 to be exact. And this is owned by a gentleman who is the son of a friend of mine. And I'm trying to help him out on this for, I don't want to say why, because if somebody's watching this video that might know that person, let's just put it this way. It might be like a surprise for them. You get what I'm saying here? So, mum's the word on this, okay? Okay, so this is the condition in which I got it in. This gentleman contacted me months ago, actually, was asking me some questions about it over the phone, saying that it ran and it started okay, but then it would start smoking after it got up to operating temperature. And then it would die, and then it would not restart until it cooled down. So he did some work on it, as you can see. This is how I got it. Well, this isn't exactly how I got it. I got it wrapped up. It looked like somebody wrapping a turkey up in a couple of blankets with rope, like you might have seen in the old days, or twine in that case. But anyway, the thing was wrapped up nicely and protected because he hasn't been working on it for a while, because it kind of got above his capability level. So I've been talking to him for a while on this. I finally made some room to get it in here so I could get it done for him. And so I want to show you what I found in this video. So you're not going to see a whole lot of hands-on, because I'm going to do most of this off camera, but I'm just kind of catching you up to date because it's kind of interesting, and this might help you in working on something when you're, let's just say, not doing it 100% to or by the book as far as the numbers go. And that's what we have to do in this job. The budget is just not there for doing it by the book. So we're going to cheat. So let me explain what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'd like to introduce you to Cylinder and Mr. Head. And the cylinder and the head both have problems, and you know what we're going to do about it? Nothing. All right? Here's the first problem. We got a nice score running vertically in that bore. You can kind of see it right there. You can feel it, but what I ended up doing was, it doesn't look too bad in other areas. As you can see, excuse me, I got a little gas, and there's a little bit there. Actually, some of that is surface scratches from running the bore gauge into it, the dial bore gauge. That'll come right out. That'll come right out with a little polish, but we're not going to do that either. The rings will take care of that. But this is definitely a little line that's going up and down the vertical plane of the head, of the cylinder rather, the bore, whatever that is. So what I ended up doing on this was, because it is absolutely not worth, the machine's not worth doing anything else like getting a 0.25 over piston and rings, sending this out and have it honed or bored out to the appropriate piston to clearance size, and then doing it that way, because you saw it. This thing is the definition of rough. If you look rough up in the dictionary, this is what you see. Okay, this is the picture they have next to the definition. I know, I just looked it up. Trust me, you got to do it. So what I'm going to do is, and what I already did was, I should say, is I went kamikaze on this bore with my bore hone, the one with the stones. And I don't mean Rolling Stones or the 420 stones. I'm talking about the stones for cutting bores bigger and cleaning them up. Bigger! And it cleaned a good amount of it up. Then I followed up with that 220 ball hone to finish prepping the surface so I can get my angles. I got some pretty good, really close to 40, 45 degree crosshatch in there. We're going to ship it. It's going back in. Not with the stock piston though, I'll show you that here in a minute. So this is the head, and you can see that this is Mr. Head. Hello people! Kind of looks like he's going, ah! And got one eye bigger than the other. But I cleaned it up pretty good, and as far as the flatness goes, I'm not going to check it because it's not important. The valve seats are, intake side's good as usual, but exhaust side is not too terribly good. Now I haven't done any lapping or anything on this yet, just haven't gotten to that point, but you can see they're not great. And as far as the valves go, well, the intake, again, as you would expect, is okay, but it isn't perfect either. I mean, that is kind of I don't know if somebody tried to cut this with some, lap it rather, because it's like that face is sunk in to the 45 there. We're gonna leave that. And this is the exhaust valve, and again, it is not too terribly good, but we're gonna clean that up and use it as well. So again, we have zero extra budget to do this the quote-unquote book way, by the book. Now as far as the numbers go on the bore, diameter wise, we're really pushing the limits on the clearance or the total bore size, and thus the piston to bore clearance with this stock size bore as it sits after honing it. Even before honing it, it was close. In fact, it does have some out of roundness. It's basically, and I mean basically, like, depending on how you look at it, within the tolerance, but maybe barely, or perhaps a few tenths out. As far as taper goes, I didn't notice any substantial taper. That's definitely within. But again, the bore size and roundness is, yeah. We're going to run it. We're going to ship this. We're going to send it. And so what we're going to do is, let me show you the piston, what the problem was. There's two problems with this. Number one, we have another situation with the oil rings are just smashed in there big time. They got like no springage left to them. This is the oil control rings, I mean, down the bottom here. So that's part of the problem, especially after it warmed up. The other part of the problem is, or was, valve guide seals. The valve guide seals or valve stem seals were really wore out, probably petrified. I mean, you could probably cut a diamond with these. Not really, but they're awfully hard. And they fit not very snug on the valve stems. So there you go. There's your problem, lady. You got oil coming in, especially after it warms up and things expand a little bit and soften up, like the rubber on those. Especially at idle, sucking oil in on the intake side, and probably following the plug. Maybe the thing's overheating. As far as the compression goes, it may have been low on compression and got lower when the thing expanded out because the rings are not seating right. The compression ring, first and second, don't look bad. They don't look great either. I mean, they're kind of pitted, to be honest with you. You look at that second ring, that don't look so good. And the piston, of course, has seen better millennia, or millenniums. I don't know, is that a word? This side's even better. There you go. So, this is what we're going to do. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. This is the best part. Okay, so here's your piston pin or wrist pin for your old school guys. The center section of this wrist pin is a thou smaller diameter than the outer parts. It is actually worn the wrist pin down. Now this sumbitch is harder than a coffin nail, so how it does this, I'm not exactly sure. Now if you go look at the connecting rod, the small end, well, that's not great either. It's round. I measured with a spring gauge. Spring, one of these guys, a spring internal gauge. It's round. It's pretty even around all aspects of the 360-degree range, but it's a little bit big too. Now, he said there was a knock to this engine. Top end knock, bottom end, I don't know. I can tell you right now that this clearance, when you put it in and it's centered where it normally lives, is pretty substantial as far as how much you can move it, see? Now that's pretty significant, folks. Now if you go out to a good section of it though, even that wide, or that long away from the center of it, it's not that bad. So I think that the piston pin took the brunt of it, and this is probably close. I cannot find a spec in the service manual that tells me what this is supposed to be. So this is what we're doing. All right, this gets me to where we're going with this whole, dialogue here. I've ordered a cheap Taiwanese kit from Fleabay with the customer's approval. That includes a piston pin, the circlips or circlips, yeah, for the piston pin on the inside of the piston here to hold it in place. These guys right there, and a top end gasket kit it includes. So you got your base gasket, you got your head gasket, you got valve stem seals, other O-rings, things like that. The O-ring that goes on the bottom of the cylinder before it goes in, and on top of the gasket. Once you put the gasket down, then that goes in on top of that. And between the base of the jug and the block here and the gasket, that comes with it, and a couple other doodads like gaskets and O-rings and stuff. Or really O-rings, because that's it on the gasket. So we're gonna throw the cheapest parts available at this thing that we can, and I'm talking about that whole kit with the pistons under $100, and we're gonna throw it at this, and we're gonna see if we can bring it back. Not going to be perfect, okay, and will it smoke? Maybe a little bit for a while until we get some ring seatage, maybe not. Will it run okay? Probably. Will it last a long time? Most definitely not, most likely, but he doesn't need it to last a long time. A couple of years, and then he can age this thing out and do something else. So that's what we're doing with it. It's going to be an interesting test project. We're kind of just looking at it not from a lackadaisical, but from a relaxed point of view. We don't have to be so precise as we are like on the XS11, where I'm completely, engulfed in being super anal about the measurements and so forth on this, because in that you got to, but on this you don't got to. So this is what we're going to do. It's going to be fun. I'll shoot this video over a period of time, and then once it's all compiled, I'll put it up, and then you can see the result. Anyway, that's cool, and it's going to be fun. So you won't see it until it's done. So if you're looking at this video right now, and I'll show you it even if it's a fail, I do that. I will show you when I screw up, or not necessarily screw up, but something I try doesn't work, because I want to help you guys learn too. And if it doesn't work, then don't do it this way. But if it does, then I think it'd be a viable option, and I'll put links in the description at that point of where I got the crap from. Okay, folks, I jumped way ahead here because I got to get this done. I was going to shoot a few things in between getting it to this point, but I just couldn't do it. So right now it's back together. I have test fired it. Runs okay. We'll go into the details here in a second. I'm going to put you in the stand so you can hear it, and then we'll discuss the parts I used and some other customization, adaptation that I had to do on this to make it work. And yeah, it gets pretty interesting. He's got all the rest of his plastic and stuff, the customer, so the ignition switch is over here. Believe it or not, this battery that looks like it was manufactured in the last century took a charge, and it's got good power. So let me turn some fuel on. Got my OEM approved auxiliary fuel can hooked up here, and we're gonna fire her up. What was I gonna do? We're gonna turn it on. That's what we are. Turn me on, baby. Ready? Contact. Yeah, see, this problem is the carburetor, and we'll get into that here in a second because it's one of these Chinese junks, but it's in pretty bad shape. I'm going to replace it, but we'll discuss that here in a minute. Once she warms up, she's a little bit better. Go ahead and bump the idle up a little bit. So, I don't hear any knocking. Little valve tick. We'll get into the valve thing here in a minute. No smoking. I mean, it smoked when we first started it, but nothing now. And I think with the new carburetor coming in, I can probably dial it in a little bit better. Because these things are not exactly right. They're jetted wrong, you know, the junk, but it's all we got to work with. And this one is corroded on the inside of it. I cleaned it out best I could. Yeah, she just does not want to run with that carburetor. It's a piece of junk. We need to dial that in better, like I said. It actually might be a little on the rich side. I did back out the air screw, the fuel screw a little bit. May have to adjust that. I'm not going to worry about it now because we're putting a different carb on, but I'll dial it in later. But anyway, she sounds okay. See, now it's getting warmer, so yeah, see, this thing just needs carburetor replaced. I'll try to tweak it, and yeah, but there's a lot of other problems here, but it sounds pretty good. All right, so not bad. Now the whole purpose of this video is essentially to show you that you can do some fairly substantial engine work on one of these old clunkers, and if you're doing the work yourself, you can get this thing in a running condition where you can use it for, I don't know how long, a year or two, whatever, for really low amount of money. So let's go discuss that right now. What I got into it as far as parts. We'll go over here to DOB, Dad's Old Bench. These are the snap rings for the Yamaha pistons when they come in. I just got those in today. Anyway, all right. So this is a Nomura Technologies Incorporated kit. Here's the part number for a standard for the 250 Bayou, KLF 250. It comes with this Vertex piston and gasket kit. And this actually has everything you need. It even has the O-rings for the top caps for the valve adjusters. And it has O-rings for a couple other things too, like the covers that go on. It's got the carb O-rings, you know, for the insulator. This particular one has an insulator with two O-rings, one on each side of the insulator, and then that's the part that bolts up to the head for the carb holder side, all right? So that it isn't bad. I mean, it's not a bad kit at all. This is the only O-ring that I don't really know what it goes to. It just might be one of these universal things. There is no O-ring in the top end of this size. For anything that I could tell. It does come with a seal for the, what is it called? The pressure release doodad, which is right up in here. So there's your pressure release, compression release, I should say. What am I saying pressure release for? So it comes with the seal for the compression release, the shaft here. You said shaft. And you lift this up to engage it. Yeah, it comes with everything else, you know, the base gasket for the cylinder, the head gasket, the whole thing. So it's not bad, you know, it's Chinese made. I did have a little trouble with the oil control rings, and I'll show you on the old, well, I guess not. I'll show you on the old piston here. The OEM ones, I put the expander in first like you're supposed to, and clocked the space, or the joint rather, between the expander ends. Every time I put a oil control ring in, it would dislodge the expander. and it was a really hard time getting in. I would consider that manufacturing variances from OEM spec and just being cheap, but eventually I did get it, and I was able to get my compression tool, ring compression tool on to slide the jug down on it. I didn't film any of that. Like I said, I needed to get this done. So what I did, of course, was drain the oil and refilled it with fresh. The oil that came out of it was like greenish in color because it's some moisture in it. Thing's been sitting forever. And the other problem we have with it is the air box. The cover to the air box is all those little clips are broken, so I'm trying to figure out a solution to that. I don't know if there is one. I've never been able to get a good solution before. He really needs to replace the air box with a good one that's got those metal clips to hold this cover down. This thing not going to run for shit without this air box sealed. In fact, somebody drilled a bunch of holes in it, and I put some Gorilla Tape on that. You don't need that. This thing is not like jetted for performance. Okay, so let's talk about valves. Now, I did the head work, and the valves came out great. And I got them back in, and I said I was going to test the combustion chamber with the fuel thing, and I never did it. I said, you know what, it's going to be what it is, because I can't, you know, do everything on this thing. Somebody wants to go inside and hang out with his mommy. You want to go see mommy? Is that it? Oh, you want to see your mommy. Okay, let's go. Where was I? Okay, it's hard to describe. I shot a little bit of video. I'll insert it here as I talk, but they're mainly like B-roll video. I'll show you on a rocker arm that I have laying in here. I happen to see one in one of these bins here. Okay, I'll show you on a rocker this is actually a Magna rocker with a VF750 because it's got the single rocker with the two stem and nuts to adjust the two valves. On this one, on the intake side, the pad that rubs against the cam pretty much looked like this one. It's completely wore out. The exhaust wasn't bad. The cam is smoked in this thing. You gotta understand right off the bat. This entire engine is smoked, but the cam is definitely smoked. You know, it's got some significant wear to the lobes, and it was just not in the budget to repair that and replace that. And remember, we're doing this, throwing a few parts at it, doing what we got to do with what we have to make it work and get the thing running so his kid can ride it around for a year or two and then he can sell it and get him a bigger one or a different one, whatever. So you got to remember, this is not a customer job or repair job that I'm going for a restoration level or, you know, OEM spec level. This is just to get it running so the kid can run around, and, you know, he's not going to be able to necessarily put a lot of money into a machine like this. So this is why I'm doing it, you know. I'm doing this as a favor mainly for him, and I'm really not going to make hardly anything on this job. So I'm just kind of doing it in between waiting on the piston rings for the XS11. But anyway, you see the pad there is all gouged out with the exhaust. The intake one rather was just like that. So I said, let me look online and see if I can get them. Well, you can get the aftermarket Chinese junk, and they're really inexpensive, like 30 bucks for the two of them, intake and exhaust. But I'm going to tell you right now, that stuff's crap. So what I did was, I had already installed it. I just took the cover off and the sprocket here. This cover was off. I took, you know, these covers were off too. I took whatever I needed to get out, slung the chain up on some mechanics wire, and then pulled this intake rocker out, you know, which is real easy to do. And then I brought it over and I actually welded up the pad. I took my welder and I set it on high power, you know, as far as the amperage and voltage goes, and then low feed, and try to get some heat into it. And I got some decent material in there. I was able to grind it back, and I left a certain amount of it left so I could see the profile of it. And I ground it and filed it and sanded it and got the profile right, and said, you know what, I think that's going to be better than this Chinese crap, because whenever I weld something and then I have to drill something afterwards, I mean, I end up burning up high-speed steel on that. So I know the weld is hard. Probably not necessarily as hard as these, because generally these are case hardened. But you know what? Like I said, it's not going to the moon. It's not for NASA. It's just for a kid to run around for a year or two. I guarantee it's going to last that long. All right? The other thing I had to do was, and this is a little bit more controversial, but this is what I did. The cam chain tensioner on this side because the cam chain is so stretched, so you have a fixed guide over here and then a guide that follows the cam chain tensioner that actually puts the tension on the chain. Those are all worn out. And so what was happening was when I put the tensioner back in and I cocked it and then put it in, tightened it up and released it, there's a slot machined into the push rod for the cam chain tensioner. And this bolt here, all it does, it allows you to cock it and put it in a retracted position to put it in. But when you release it, there's a turn down tip on the end of that bolt that goes into that slot. And what that does is it won't let the plunger go any further out. All right, it stops it. So that's really important to have that there. And it also keeps it from turning. But I don't see how that would be a problem because the end of the push rod is round. I didn't take any video or photos of it. I probably should have. But so what was happening was the push rod would extend all the way until it would be actually past that little slot. And so you couldn't get this bolt back in because it was extending out too far. So the proper solution to that is we replace the cam guides, cam chain, and then it'll resume its normal functionality. But again, that'd be a lot of money to do that. So we're not going to do that, and we didn't do it. So what I did was I took the tensioner out, and on the end of the tensioner there's basically a little kind of like a little mushroom area. It's very thin. It's not a very broad area, I should say, widthwise, that pushes against the guide. I cut that right off. I put it in the lathe and I used some carbide and faced it. And then I machined a thicker one out of some steel, just mild steel. And it kind of looks like this. I scrapped one because I went too far. I'll show you what it looks like. It looks like this. So picture this on the end of that plunger, but I made this too deep. That was the problem. So I made another one, and I bored this out with just a little high-speed steel boring tool to about, I don't know, 2-3 thousandths smaller than the OD of the shaft of the plunger. And chamfered everything up nice to give it a chance, and used red Loctite and then just essentially pressed it in, tapped it in, tappy tap tap. And so that's a press fit and with red Loctite in the end of that plunger. So I figured if I extended it about 200 thou thicker than it would work, and it did. So yeah, it's not the right repair, but I remember that trick from the old Vulcan 1500 and 1600 trick, because they had a problem with that same issue with the cam chain tensioners pretty soon, early I should say, in the life of the motor, extending almost all the way out, and so you didn't have much more tension on. There's one of these, it looks like a ball bearing that fits inside of a taper that locks that thing so it can't come backwards. So once it goes out, it stays out until it's removed. So it's definitely working now, but I bet you still it's 2/3 or more out of the, down that slot rather. So that's how we dealt with that. So we have good cam chain tension. But again, it's not the correct fix, but we're not going for that on this job. We're going to fix it to make it work, and however long it lasts is however long it lasts, all right? So that's basically what I'm trying to explain to you here. So let me go over how much money we got in parts on this thing, which is actually pretty little. Okay, this kit is about like 89 bucks on eBay. I think the shipping was free. I'll put a link in the description where I got it. And then I ordered another one of these carbs, and I'll discuss that here briefly because I don't want to, beat this dead horse here. But this is an aftermarket Chinese junk clone carb. But at any rate, I ordered the exact same one. I found it on Amazon. 26 bucks, free shipping. So we're just gonna throw another one of these on. I wish I had the original Kahin or Makini, whatever the hell this thing came with, because I'd rebuild that in a heartbeat. So we got bored with his mommy, probably because she wouldn't give him FOOD, so now he's out here with me again. All right, where was I again? Carburetor, yeah. So we're just going to throw the same one in here. It does not fit right. It's not long enough, so the carb intake pipe going from the air box to that is a little bit short. This is just not the correct setup, but again, it is what we're going to have to do. The other problem we have here is this air box cover. I think I mentioned that just now. I can't remember. Keep getting interrupted by somebody. And so, all right, look, you need to stop, all right? You need to stop. You do not need anything. You need to stop. All right? You gonna stop? Yeah, so this is no good. I just got a bungee on here to hold it in place, but really what needs to happen is this needs to be replaced. He needs to replace the air box. Yeah, so anyway, it runs, doesn't smoke, and it, it's okay, doing good. So I'm happy with it at this point. I hope the customer is, but I'm going to lose my shirt on this job, basically. But again, I am not doing it for the money. I'm doing it as a favor. I'm doing it to help somebody out. I guess that's the main thing that I wanted to convey here. I'm doing it to help somebody out. I'm not doing it for money thing. And plus, I'm waiting on the rings for this. So, I'm cranking out these smaller, I guess. Not necessarily small, but these smaller jobs in between waiting on those parts for the XS11. And yeah, so it's not bad. I mean, it's about as good as it's going to get. Let me think if there's anything else that I had to, kind of massage. I don't think there was. Got everything else in pretty much the way it's supposed to be. All right, guys, that's it on this video. I'm going to reiterate for the umpteenth time that this is not the correct way to do this job. This is the way I did it, based upon the needs of the customer and the fact that this thing really is a pile of junk. He's going to do all the rest of the stuff on it. I'm not going to do any more work on it that I know of at this point. Like, any brake work or anything like that to make it safe for his kid to ride, that's going to be on him to deal with, unless he asks me to do it, and there's going to be more cost to it. I'm trying to keep this as cost effective as possible. And he's got kids, and I really would like to see his kids have a really good Christmas. Don't tell anybody, though, if you know who this is, all right? Don't say a word, in case you do. But yeah, I really want the kids to have a really good holiday, so this is why I do it. And I had the time waiting on the piston rings for the XS11 and cranking out a couple other jobs before this one. So yeah, this one's done. If you like what you saw, don't hesitate to subscribe, ring the bell, get notified, share the video, like the video. You know what to do. You're smart. You watch YouTube. So until next time, thanks for watching again, and don't just repair, restore. We'll catch you on the next video.